So welcome to the 5th Annual Composting and Organics Recycling Conference and the 2nd Annual Food Recovery Forum. In this keynote session, we have two speakers who focus on federal programs to reduce food waste and loss in the United States. And our third keynote speaker will focus on how to handle the remaining food waste that is not prevented at the source or cannot be recovered to feed the hungry. Our first speaker in the keynote session is Dr. Elise Golan, Director of Sustainable Development at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. In this role, she provides leadership in developing the department's policies and programs related to sustainable agricultural development. Elise will be presenting USDA food waste loss and prevention and recovery initiatives. Please join me in welcoming Elise.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Either I need to have a little step stool or I have to kind of put this down. I'll sneak around here so you can see me and I can see you. It's a pleasure to be here. I have never attended the WasteExpo before, so I'm excited to see what all of this is about, because I know there's a lot going on. So I'm not starting out with the typical slides that tell you how much food waste there is in the world and why we care, because I'm assuming you're here because you do care about it, and you do know it's about 30 to 40% of the food that we produce annually is wasted. And this is unacceptable on every level you can imagine. So at USDA, the goal to reduce food loss and waste is really fundamental. Nope, I went too far. Reducing food loss and waste is core to our mission, and it's a core to a lot of our mission areas at USDA. USDA is a huge department. We have a lot of different mission areas. Reducing food loss and waste is core to our mission area for food security and affordable, nutritious diets. It's core to increasing the strength and resiliency of farms and rural communities. It's core, we know, to natural resource conservation and climate change mitigation. So at USDA, where do we start? Our priority is definitely on the top of the hierarchy. I think you've probably all seen this. I know Cheryl will probably show it to you again, and you'll probably, okay, she won't. So I'm glad I showed it. So this is the EPA USDA food recovery hierarchy. I actually like to call it the food loss and waste reduction hierarchy, because at the top of this hierarchy is source reduction. Let's stop food loss and waste before it even starts. Then, if there's wholesome food that is produced and it's not sold, doesn't go immediately into the market or somewhere, let's recover that food to feed hungry people. And then only thirdly, fourthly, fifthly, whatever else, do we think about other uses for that food. Because if we're producing food to feed people, then the resources we're putting into that food are the resources that are necessary to produce food of high enough quality and nutritional value for people, and that food should be used to feed people. We want to make sure we get incentives right, stick at the top of this hierarchy. So at USDA, what are we doing at the top of that hierarchy? So the first thing we're doing is what I like to call a pot for every potato. Even these wonderfully heart-shaped potatoes, or every single fruit and vegetable that's grown out there, as ugly or as contorted as it may be. We want to have a pot for every potato. Core to what USDA does is to make sure that we have markets that work correctly for farmers. That whatever a farmer pulls out of the ground, there's going to be a market for that product, and it's going to be the highest valued market we can find. And that means we have product differentiation. I know a lot of people talk about grading standards and that those are one of the reasons we have food waste. Actually, grading standards help these markets work. They help make sure that that potato that is of a quality that a consumer wants to buy, that potato turns up at your grocery store, and that the potato that's better for making potato flakes or frozen French fries or puree or anything else, that those potatoes goes to the markets that are appropriate for those kind of potatoes, and that they get the highest valued use to that farmer who produced it, and that we reduce waste along the chain. Another thing USDA does is we help farmers with on-farm basic storage. A lot of times we say, oh, storage, post-harvest loss. That's something you only worry about in developing world, that those developing farmers are having problems once they take in a harvest and it's rotting in their fields or rotting in inappropriate storage places. Well, storage is something farmers have been dealing with forever. And at USDA, we have a program called the Farm Storage Facility Loan Program. And that program helps farmers get loans to set up storage facilities on their farms to keep the quality of their product, their harvested product, high, and to also help them hedge markets. You want to wait until the market is right for your product. Everyone's, they're harvesting all at the same time. So if you sold everything at the same time, somebody else is going to be hedging that market. So on-farm storage can help farmers get the best value, again, for their product. Since 2000, USDA has spent about $2 billion on this loan program, and it covers just about any kind of product you can think of. And it's primarily targeted to smaller, mid-sized businesses, new farmers, local farmers, non-traditional farm products. This really is a way to get that storage options for them. USDA also focuses on gleaning. So there is going to be often leftover product on the field after a farmer has taken out the product. Gleaning means, and we all know what this is, groups come in, they can take that product out of the field, they can get it to food banks, to community centers in their communities for people who can use that food. On the USDA website, if you look at our website, we have a long list of organizations that do this type of gleaning. They help, whether it's the Society of St. Andrews or other gleaners, they help organize groups to get onto the fields and get that food out. And now, gleaning kind of goes along the whole supply chain when you think about it. There are essentially gleaners that are helping to make these connections between a supermarket that has excess food and getting that to a food pantry, or a restaurant that has excess food, or a convention center, or a hotel. So there's actually gleaning happening all up and down the chain. Now, again, if you go to our website, you'll find a lot of these organizations that are doing gleaning up and down the chain. You'll also find a toolkit up there called Let's Glean, United We Serve Toolkit. If you want to find out who you can glean with in your area, who works with farmers in your areas, go to your state USDA office. They can help you with that. So another thing we know is that some of the product that's coming out of the field, farmers maybe can't find a really high value use for it, but they have an idea. They have an idea of a product they could make that could make a little more money for them, that would satisfy consumers' needs, maybe help their local community. So they have an idea of what they can do with that product. USDA also offers producer innovation grants. And these grants are targeted to farmers, ranchers, small businesses, to help them promote these additional products, these value-added products. And since about 2009, USDA has provided $183 million worth of these kinds of grants to farmers. So another thing that I think is very important that USDA does, and I think this is one of the most interesting services that federal government can provide. These are these you think of these public good research. This is something, a key responsibility, a key product that the federal government can provide is public good research. And USDA has invested quite a bit money in R&D to reduce spoilage of products from the farm all the way through to the consumer's household. Some of these products, I start with harvesting and culling. We're right down on the farm. We know that if you can properly pick that product off the tree, you don't bruise it, you figure out which product, you handle it carefully, you figure out if something is already rotten in the core, don't put that in your box. USDA has developed a number of these type of harvesting products, sometimes using high-tech technologies like lasers, to make sure that what's going into a box is a good product, because we all know that one bad apple does really spoil that whole box. It really does spoil that bag. You want to get those products out of your supply chain as early as possible. I always like to say you want to cull early, not later. You don't want to take that bad apple and push it all the way up your supply chain. All the resources that went into producing it and then transporting it and then all the way up, processing it, getting to the supermarket, and then throw it away because you just amplified your waste along the chain. So cull early. USDA is also investing in warehouse storage, new types of fumigation, particularly suitable for organic products like grapes. California, harvests billions of dollars worth of grapes, and some of these fumigation technologies that help to preserve the grapes in the warehouses are not appropriate for organic product. USDA has developed a new compound that can preserve those grapes. It actually doubles the warehouse life of those grapes, and they can still be sold as organic. Another thing that's possible that we can do at USDA, and we've invested some money in, is on-farm processing. Small processors that come onto the farm, and as you're actually pulling out the product, you can immediately process it and then have a high-valued product. One of the most interesting things that came out of this research, I think, is a small peanut processor that was developed by USDA and then sent to Haiti. It turns out that about 50% of the peanut crop in Haiti is lost due to poor moisture control right at the field, right at storage. And of course, people are starving in Haiti. And so USDA went in with this processor. We could process those peanuts in the field, produce a high quality, nutritious product, reduce the amount of toxins in that product, and get it to people who needed it. How about new varieties? Sometimes you can tweak the variety through hybriding, and you can create a product that actually is more nutritious. It actually has a longer shelf life, and you can pull that through the supply chain with less wastage. Also have just normal, great new packaging. We have powdered fruit and vegetable coatings that USDA has developed that inhibit spoilage of fresh cut product. We have moisture loss. We have new packaging that reduces moisture loss. I'm sure you've all bought turkey products in the grocery store, ground turkey products, or sometimes beef that is packaged now in those kind of vacuum puffy packages. That prolongs the shelf life. I can't even remember how long that prolongs it, quite a long time. And that came out of a USDA laboratory. Another thing USDA does is we spend a lot of money on value-added products. So these are these cosmetically challenged products that maybe nobody wants to eat. We hear a lot now about we should all be going out there and eating our ugly fruits and vegetables. Go ahead and eat your ugly fruits and vegetables. That's great. But at USDA, we're also spending a lot of time figuring out how we can make those ugly fruits and vegetables a little more palatable for all of you so that you don't have to think, should I eat it? Instead, you say, hey, that looks delicious. I'm going to eat that. So one thing, think of a giant yam. Think you go to your grocery store and there's this huge giant yam there. You're not going to buy it. Well, farmers actually produce a lot of huge giant yams. What are we going to do with them? USDA worked with a group of farmers and researchers, and we produced a new microwave technology that can create these wonderful purees out of these giant yams that are tasty, delicious, high nutrition content. And that kind of technology can be used then for a lot of products, like those giant yams that nobody wants to eat. We also developed these new licensed technology for producing fruit bars, 100% fruit bars out of ugly fruits and vegetables. And these fruit bars are now marketed everywhere around the world. They're marketed in Iran, Japan, Mexico, Canada through a private firm in Pacific Northwest. In lab at Albany, California, one of our coolest labs, they're doing tons of stuff out there. And there's now a great YouTube video featuring the head of that lab as she's making beer out of some of that bread out of the spent grains from a cool brewery in the Bay Area, and they're making bread out of this spent grains. But you can also make, they've developed technologies for making these great crispy chips and breads out of beer as well. So there's bread and beer out of bread and bread out of beer. So you can go both ways. So lots of cool technologies and good things. And then out of byproducts, you can take, like I just said, all of these kinds of byproducts and create wonderful new products. So USDA is not the only people doing new innovations. You think about it, there's $162 billion worth of food, at least, wasted in this country. That is an economic incentive. And there are innovators across our country who are jumping into this arena to come up with new products that consumers will value and that they can make some money out of it. Maybe you've heard of Beyonce's watermelon water. So we have, kind of the big celebrities getting on this, and she realized there's all this watermelon going to waste, so that we could have this new product, watermelon water. So I'm expecting we'll see that advertised very soon. Or how about some genetically modified products? We now have two products, the Arctic apple and the innate potato, that have been modified so that they don't bruise when they are handled, and then therefore do not rot as quickly. And in the potato, in fact, is marketed, it will be marketed heavily as a way to reduce waste within the supply chain. So we have these fun things that are happening, and we can point to a lot of these new innovations and these new fun products. But a lot of the really hard work of reducing food loss and waste happens in the supply chain, in companies that are doing boring things like reorganizing their inventory and figuring out a better way to do ordering and figuring out how to clean up their stock room. And we know that a lot of the hard work of reducing food waste is going to be those businesses. So USDA and EPA wanted to recognize those businesses and to shine a spotlight on all these good efforts. And EPA started with their Food Recovery Challenge in 2010, asking businesses to come forward and work with EPA to measure how much waste they've got in their system and figure out ways to reduce it. And EPA and USDA joined in 2013, and we said, well, there's a lot of businesses out there that are not being captured in the EPA program, and they're doing great things. Let's make a registry where we can highlight them and their good efforts. So between those two programs, we've about 5,000 businesses and schools and colleges registered on our websites now. If you want to figure out what they're doing, look at our website, and you can pull up all of these businesses and get a feeling for what they're doing. And then after the administration announced that the U.S., this was an announcement by USDA and EPA, the U.S. has a new reduction goal to reduce food loss and waste in this country by 50% by 2030. After we announced that goal, we decided, okay, we want to see if businesses are going to step up and meet us at this goal, and they're going to join us in meeting this goal. And so we launched in 2016 the U.S. Food Loss and Waste 2030 Champions for those businesses that are going to join us. And the inaugural set of businesses that have joined us were an impressive set. And I'm going to just read through them now. You can go to either the USDA or the EPA website to actually find out more about these businesses and what they're doing. But they include Ahold USA, that's Stop and Shop and Giant supermarkets, Aramark, Blue Apron, Bon Appetit, Campbell's, Conagra Foods, Delhaize, that's Hannaford and Food Lion, General Mills, Kellogg's, Marley Spoon, PepsiCo, Sodexo, Sprouts, Unilever, Walmart, Wegmans, Weiss, and Yum Brands. All of these businesses are stepping up, and within their operations, they're going to reduce their food loss and waste by at least 50% by 2030. So all of this is by way of telling you that we're getting some good momentum in this country around reducing food loss and waste. And hopefully about now your eyes are kind of spinning and you say, I can't keep track of all this. So much is going on. Well, luckily, we have created a central portal called the Further with Food. And Further with Food is designed to be a place where in the United States you can go to this portal. You can find out what's happening across communities in the United States, what innovators are doing, what governments are doing, local governments and federal governments, what we're doing to reduce food loss and waste. And this is a great collaboration, Further with Food. This is a collaboration between USDA and EPA. It's a standalone website, but it's USDA, EPA, and again, I'm sorry, I'm going to read a list, just so that you know that this is the U.S. coming together for this Further with Food. It's the Academy of Nutrition Dietetics, Feeding America, Food Marketing Institution, Grocery Manufacturers Association, Innovation Center for U.S. Dairy, the National Consumers League, the National Restaurant Association, Natural Resource Defense Council, Sustainable America, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, World Resources Institute, and the World Wildlife Fund. So we've got our big NGOs, we've got our consumer advocates, we've got Feeding America. The U.S. is coming together around this issue to reduce food loss and waste. 5 more minutes? 2 more minutes? 5 more minutes? Okay. So now I'm sorry that I left this to the end, but we do know that we're not going to beat this if we don't engage consumers. In the United States, we know that consumers are probably responsible for most of the problem. We know that at least 21% of the food supply is wasted at the consumer level out of our 30% that's wasted altogether. So what are we going to do about this? Just for fun, I have to show these to you because I love these slides. And so anyone who's ever heard me talk knows I'm going to show these slides because I just love them. So I hope you love them as much as I do. These are slides that reach back to World War I, where the U.S. government has been trying to convince consumers, stop wasting so much food. Again, these are up on our website if you'd like to look at them. Waste no food. Don't feed that good food. Don't put it in your garbage pail, kitchen sink, and don't feed it to high-priced human food to hogs or chickens. That's good advice for all of us. This is not something you would see now. We're not telling anyone to just eat that food waste. That's kind of not the way we want to go here. But this is up in the USDA cafeteria. This is good advice even for now. Food, buy it with thought, cook it with care, serve just enough, save what will keep, eat what would spoil. Okay, we are amplifying those messages at USDA, reaching out to consumers, telling them about how to preserve food at home. We have that up on our website. We also have a Food Keeper app that anyone can download. It tells you how long a food will save, what you can do with it once you get it home. We just issued new date labeling guidance. A lot of people are confused about the date labels on food and throw it away for no good reason. It's still perfectly good to eat, but it is a confusing issue. USDA just issued new guidance on that. Not just educating consumers about what it means, but advising or recommending to manufacturers that they use best if used by on their product and not other confusing language. We've been joined by FMI, GMA in this kind of advice, and Walmart has already applied this in its private brands. We also have myplate.gov, the Let's Talk Trash infographic that's up there to try to reach out to consumers to tell them even more tips about how to reduce food loss and waste in their homes. It's had over 2 million downloads by now, so we're very proud of that. Working in schools, all of this is up on our website, so please have a look up there. Lots of clever things you can do in schools to reduce waste in the lunchroom. List there. And we also have a food waste audit guide up on our website, which I hope you'll have a look at. And there is the website. So please have a look, do your part. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them. Sorry about that.
Okay. We'll do questions at the end of the session. Thank you, Elise. Our next speaker is Cheryl Coleman, Director of the Resource Conservation and Sustainability Division of the U.S. EPA's Office of Conservation and Recovery. She's responsible for partnerships with stakeholders across the life cycle of materials and for developing policy and outreach materials on sustainable materials management. Cheryl will be presenting the path to 50% food waste reduction by 2030. Please join me in welcoming Cheryl.
Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us this morning. I want to point out, first of all, that everyone in this room contributes to the problem of food waste, individually and collectively. But our participation in that problem also empowers us professionally and personally to make progress towards the solutions. Although food waste is often described as a problem, and it is, I also believe that it is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for each one of us to take meaningful action to promote economic growth, resiliency, create jobs, conserve our natural capital, and minimize negative environmental impacts. And Elise, I did lie to you. I am going to use the pyramid. So I'm just going to kind of keep talking to keep us on. All right, so I'm going to actually skip through some slides because Elise also went through some of what I was going to say. So food does continue to be one of it is the largest waste stream going for disposal each year in our landfill. And at EPA, we've really been focused for a number of years on getting food out of the landfills. We've been trying to reduce what we send to landfills for a number of years, and trying to get food out of the landfills has been a focus area of ours for a number of years. Many of you may remember the Feed People Not Landfills program that we started a number of years ago, and as Elise said, we worked together with USDA to form the food pyramid, which you saw earlier. And so as Elise mentioned to you, we set the 50% goal in 2015 to reduce food loss and waste, and I'm going to try to make up some time here. And one of the things we did was we had a summit in 2015 in Charleston, and we had some subsequent summits. And as a result of that, we built a site on our website at EPA called a Call to Action. And on that site, we began to gather information from all of our stakeholders. We, along with USDA, do not believe that the federal government should be the sole leader in this area. We cannot do this, and we shouldn't be doing this by ourselves. It requires everyone. As I started out by saying, everybody contributes to this problem, and it has to be addressed by all of us. It's a U.S. goal. It's not a USDA goal. It's not an EPA goal. It's a U.S. goal. And so we've been working with our stakeholders. As you heard Elise say, we have the Further with Food work. We have a lot of collective action that's been going on. And my goal, what I try to do, is champion what you are doing out there. When I go around and have the opportunity to speak with various groups like this one, I try to champion what the leaders in this area are doing. And so we've worked very hard to try to champion what other stakeholders are doing and put it on our website as well as the Further with Food website. And so the call to action really highlights work that's been going on, like people who have come together and used food that otherwise would have gone to landfills to do things like create beef jerky or jams or jellies or fruit leather or salsa or other types of soups from what would have otherwise been unsellable products. We're going to have another summit called the Midwest Food Recovery Summit in Des Moines, Iowa, this coming September. And hopefully you will be able to join us because, again, we will be coming together with stakeholders to join together and address and talk about how we can continue to address this national and international problem. Elise talked also about the 2030 champions. And again, you can see the 2030 champions who have joined that. And this was announced in 2016. And I want to highlight what a big step this was for these brands. Brands are very protective of their name, and for them to step forward and say publicly that they were going to reduce their food loss and waste by 50%, for them to announce that publicly was a big deal for them because they put themselves out there and made a huge announcement and a commitment that they are going to do this so they are to be celebrated and highlighted. And so I like to really highlight this when I have an opportunity to share this with folks when I have an opportunity to speak. As Elise said, we have the Food Recovery Challenge, And each year we like to announce our winners. One of our winners this year was the town of New Paltz, New York. Not everyone does something that's really humongous. The town of New Paltz, New York. How many of you have heard of the town of New Paltz, New York? Okay, so there are a few people in here. It's a very small town, but they set up a small composting site. But they've addressed food waste and looking at wasted food in their community in a somewhat unique way. Not only have they looked at how they can collect donations for feeding hungry people, they've looked at how they can collect donations to feed animals. And they've used the same approach for feeding hungry people, for gathering wasted food to feed animals. And as a part of that process, they worked with a snack food franchise to look at how they could use wasted food that was not food that could be served to hungry people, but could be served to animals. So now that snack food franchise is donating food to a local pig and chicken farmer. So that's a unique way, and we celebrated that as part of our food recovery challenge because we just don't want the food to go to a landfill. That food is edible, and those animals are being nourished by that food. It's not wasting in a landfill. It's feeding and nourishing those animals. So if there are stakeholders or folks that you know that are doing something, please share that with us because we want to celebrate that. And there may be other communities that can use that model in their communities to keep that food out of landfills. Elise also highlighted the Further with Food, and so I won't talk about that, but I will talk about the Rapp program. EPA partnered with the American Chemistry Council, the Plastics Division, to work with Rapp. Rapp is the Rapp Recycling Action Plan campaign. Is anyone familiar with Rapp? Okay, so Rapp is the film. It's plastic film. It's the film that you get on your dry cleaning bags. It's also film that's used in a lot of food protection. It's your bread wrap, the wrap that comes around your bread, and you can often put that in bins that are outside grocery stores. That material can be used to make plastic wood. It can be used to make plastic wood can be used to make decking and other types of plastic products that can keep that also out of landfills. Plastic bags, the bags that are served in grocery stores to carry your groceries, that's film. That is also material that can be used and reused and can be used to make other plastic products. So we were partnered with ACC to try to keep that, especially out of marine debris, to make new products. And we're working with them and other stakeholders to keep it out of landfills, keep it out of our waters, and make it into new products. So we're working with ACC, we're working with Further with Food, as you heard about earlier, and we also have the Food Too Good to Waste Toolkit. I saw Ashley here earlier. Is Ashley in here? I saw Ashley in here earlier. She's worked with us closely in developing that toolkit, and it is a toolkit to work with families and communities to help them learn about how they can keep in their, you heard Elise talk about our consumers. Our consumers are our largest producers of our food waste. How you can do some analysis in your home and identify ways that you can reduce food waste in your home or your community and keep that food out of landfills. I was at a church event this past Saturday, and people would come by the table, and I would talk to them about ways they could better store their vegetables. And the first thing I heard, especially from the older people, was, I don't waste food. I don't waste food. And then when I would start talking to them about salads or fruits and vegetables, and they'd say, well, my grandchild doesn't like bananas when they get spots on them. And so I would say, well, maybe you could freeze those and use them in smoothies. Well, yeah, maybe I waste those, but I don't waste food. I don't waste food. But when you have conversations with people, we all waste food in some way or another. And it's just really about having a conversation with people and talking with them to identify ways that we can reduce food waste. We also worked with USDA and the University of Arkansas to create a guide on a guide to conducting student food waste audits. It's a K through 12 guide for school cafeterias, but it also contains many suggestions that are helpful to any institutional food provider. We are partnering with many states, companies, and municipalities to develop steering committees and convene and engage stakeholders to improve prevention, donation, and recycling. We like to provide tools and resources to support you and help all of our participants and all of our stakeholders to just keep food out of landfills. We're also working with RIT, the Rochester Institute of Technology. They've got a lot of research that they're doing around food waste, and we really want to improve our data. We really think that by improving data, we can help folks identify ways that they can reduce food waste and look for opportunities to reduce food waste and loss. We have an anaerobic digestion website. On this AD website, we will be pulling together tools and resources, example projects, and information on environmental benefits of anaerobic digestion. Week before last, I had the opportunity to attend a meeting in Cleveland, and the Cleveland Browns invited me to tour their facility. And you can see there on the right, they have some AD. They send their back of the house food that they grind, and they store it in that container that you see on your right, and then they send it to an AD facility. We are promoting the diversion of organic waste from landfills. And so I like to highlight things when I see them. So I asked Brad to send me a picture of that. So he sent me that picture. And we have a website now that we are gathering data on to really begin to get a picture of what kinds of AD facilities exist in the United States. We want to create a baseline capacity for processing organic materials in anaerobic digesters. We will track AD processing capacity over time to better understand the factors that affect the growth of the AD industry. This will help us with developing policies and activities to further increase organic recycling capacity. We distributed some electronic surveys to 3 different sectors: standalone food digesters, on-farm digesters, and digesters at water resource recovery facilities. If you are an AD facility operator and would like to participate in this study, please visit our AD website and take our survey. We really want to provide the best information based on the most complete and accurate set of data. We also have created a wasted food opportunities map. This map is currently still in development and is in the testing stage, but I wanted to share a description with you so you can get a peek at this exciting tool that we are developing to reduce food loss and waste. It's going to be an interactive tool, and it will assist anyone seeking to divert edible food as well as residuals from landfill. It will also help those who aim to recover those resources. It will help prospective project developers looking into the feasibility of an AD or composting facility. It will also help states, cities, or counties looking to estimate how much wasted food is generated within their locality, who the largest generators might be, and what alternatives to landfill currently exist. It will help nonprofits that support food waste diversion activities. And it will also help manufacturers looking to avoid sending excess product to landfill. At conferences, over the last few years, we've consistently heard we don't have good data. So we're using this map to try to help folks get consistent data using the same data points. We recently used this map at a training we did in Maryland with BioCycle using this map. And at this training, we invited local stakeholders from the food system using subject matter experts, as well as social and health indicator experts to develop and prioritize implementation strategies. This workshop aimed to pull data and tools into the hands of local governments, community leaders, organizations, and local entities in order to help them identify ways to reduce food loss and waste in PG County so that they can help reach their goal of reducing food loss and waste by 50% by 2030. So looking ahead, we continue to reach towards that goal of reducing food loss and waste by 50% by 2030, and we ask you to please focus on feeding people and not landfills. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cheryl. Our last keynote speaker is Christian Kasper, President and CEO of Harvest Power. Chris is passionate about building Harvest's leadership role in organic sustainability and delivering on its vision of a world where organics are harvested rather than wasted. Perhaps most notable in Chris's bio is that outside the office he pursues a striped bass, trophy striped bass. And I only mention that because it is a passion of mine as well. Chris will be presenting organic sustainability, turning trash into treasure in North America. Please join me in welcoming Chris.
Thanks, Stu. Good morning, everybody. Looks like I may be doing this. Well, you know what? I only have just a little loud, or is this okay, volume-wise? Very good. Okay, I've got 15 minutes. Good morning, everybody. My name is Chris Kasper. I'm the CEO of Harvest Power, and I am passionate about organics sustainability. Today, I would like to share with you some of my thoughts about the future of food waste recycling, or, a bit more provocatively, is there a future for food waste recycling? So I figured since we're in New Orleans, we should start off today's conversation talking about the Superdome. It's about a mile from here. Many of you probably passed it on your way in this morning. It is the largest dome structure in the world. That roof is 10 acres. You could fit a 25-story building inside it. 125 million cubic square feet of space. And I thought, what better way to help show the amount of food waste that we produce in a year than to see, by doing the calculations, if all the food waste in 1 year would fit inside the Superdome. And the answer is no, it would not. It would fit in 21 Superdomes. We fill up one of these every 17 days. That is a huge amount of food waste. This is what's actually going into landfills today, every year. So how are we doing? If that's what's going into landfills, what are we doing about the things that aren't going to landfills? How are we doing recycling? Harvest, founded in 2008. We've been doing this for a while, right? Have we been making good progress? The answer is no. 5% recycled. 5%. Now, I'm a father of 2 boys. My younger son just turned 13, very sweet. And he said to me, Daddy, 5%? That's really, really bad. If I got 5%, that's failing. If I got 5% on one of my tests and I brought it home, you'd be really mad. And you know what? He's right. Now, my other son, a little bit older, a little bit less sweet, said, Daddy, you're giving a speech on food waste? I feel really bad for those people. So, what can we do? Composting, right? We've been doing this for centuries. People have been composting food. Why don't we just compost it, right? Why is this so difficult? Well, here's the thing with composting. It is a good way to handle organics, particularly green waste. There are 5,000 composting facilities in North America. Problem is, only about 10% of them are doing food waste composting today. Many of them are not permitted to do food waste composting today. But here's the real challenge. Let's say we took away all the rules and we said tomorrow all those facilities are now permitted to take food waste. You know what? Let's go one step further. Let's say that we have unlimited amount of composting facilities in North America. Here's the issue. You can't just compost straight food waste. You have to mix it. It has to do with the carbon and nitrogen ratio. I won't go into all the specifics of it. But if you took all of the yard waste, all the carbon material, and mixed in food waste in appropriate, responsible amounts, we would be able to solve 15% of the food waste issue. 15%. I hear Jonathan saying, dang, still really bad. Nicholas says nothing, it's just an eye roll. So what else can we do? Well, there's anaerobic digestion. Many of you are familiar with this technology. The good news is it works. You can take food waste and process it. By the way, that's a picture of Harvest Orlando, Florida facility. It's actually located on the grounds of Disney. We take all of the food waste, both eaten and uneaten, and process it through this facility. It's a 3 megawatts of electricity, renewable energy, produces about 5,000 tons of fertilizer. We bring in 150,000 tons a year to this facility, right? So this is a great facility. Why don't we just do more of these? Well, you do the math and you realize we would need about 300 to 400 of these facilities to handle the food waste issue. That facility, pushing $40 million. You do the math, $15 billion of investment. That's a lot of money. That amount of money is not going to just flow in from private capital unless it makes economic sense. And I have a tough message to deliver to everybody today, which is while there are certain instances where it makes sense, in the vast majority of cases, it does not make economically good sense to build anaerobic digestion facilities. They are still very expensive. Very expensive. So what are we going to do? How are we going to fix this problem? My belief is this is going to require a public policy solution. One end of the spectrum, we just build it out of tax dollars. You view these things as a wastewater treatment plant. You view these things as a dam or a landfill, something managed by the public. That's one solution. Many communities have started to adopt that approach. But I don't think that's the right solution. I would like to suggest that we can do better than that we can engage in a collaboration between the public sector and the private sector, but there are certain things that need to change. I'd like to propose today 3 different types of levers that the public policymakers could pull to help get those anaerobic digesters built and to help process all that food waste. First problem, drive feedstock. Put in simple language, it is too inexpensive to put food waste into a hole in the ground. Like water, when you pour it, it always finds the lowest point. It will always run downhill, and so too does waste. It will find the cheapest outlet to go to the point where certain cities with high tip fees actually rail waste to different countries to get rid of it. Well, what are we going to do to increase the amount of food waste getting out of landfills? One, it really depends on landfill tip fees. In the United States, the average tip fee is $48, with a range going up to just a little over $100. To make anaerobic digestion work, that number needs to be well north of $100, in my personal opinion. How high should they get? Take Europe as a proxy. In Europe, the average tip fee in US converted dollars is $100, with the high end, $200 per ton. Germany, average tip fee, $193, 6,800 anaerobic digesters in Germany. If you look at the correlation between tip fees and recycling, it is a perfect correlation, near perfect correlation. So, got to raise the costs, surcharges, franchise agreements I like as well. Haulers, if you want this agreement, you need to recycle a certain percentage of that material. Plain and easy, ultimately leading, hopefully, to a point where we could implement organics bans. Second lever, de-risk development. It's really expensive, so how do we reduce the cost of building these facilities? Long-term contracts. Think about it this way. You want to build a house. You want a 30-year mortgage. You go to the bank. I have a job for the next 2 years. Lend me money to build my house on a 30-year mortgage. Not going to get a good reception. Try building a $50 million anaerobic digester with a 2-year feedstock contract. It is difficult. Fast-track permitting. We all understand the need for permitting. It's very important. But can we make decisions faster, please? Because if we did, we can reduce the amount of time, and time is money, and the speed and the certainty. And all those things go to help create a better economic incentive. Financial incentives last and not least. The Orlando facility would not have gotten built without investment tax credit that we received. Very important. Create more demand. That picture is a little blurry. It's because I took it from my iPhone. That's actually a picture of a truck leaving a harvest bagging facility. Those are bags of rooftop and garden soil blends, OMRI certified, with our compost product in it. We have to create more demand. The compost market. Compost is a good thing. I don't have time to talk about all the merits of it right now, but we love compost. Maybe we could take some of those surcharges that we charge on the landfill and use them to help our farmers to invest in building their sustainability of their soil. Energy interconnections. Some of the good things about anaerobic digestion is the products it makes are valuable, right? The problem is if you can't get them into the pipeline or you can't get the electricity onto the grid, it doesn't do you much good. It doesn't help support the cost of the investment. Biogas feed-in tariffs. Very quickly, feed-in tariffs, long-term contracts at favorable market pricing to take some of that off-take. We have them today when it comes to electricity. How about we think about them in regard to biogas, renewable energy source that comes from the methane produced by anaerobic digestion. So those are my 3 levers today. But we can't rely solely on the private sector. Excuse me, the public sector. The private sector needs to get involved as well. Companies like Harvest, companies like, I'm sure many of you out there in this group, we need what I'll call a Thomas Edison moment. We need to think about innovation. We need a better mousetrap. Not a 10% better mousetrap, a 10x better mousetrap. We need to think about different ways of doing this today. Can we reduce the amount of time it takes to process an anaerobic digester? Increase the throughput tenfold. Can we think about maybe a different technology, something beyond anaerobic digestion? Because this is a big problem, and we need to address it. And the reality is that it is not going to fix itself. Today we have about 40 anaerobic digesters, large-scale commercial food waste anaerobic digesters in North America. There's only a handful getting built right now. As the former CFO of Harvest Power, I have to tell you, I personally have shot down more AD projects probably than anybody else because they didn't work. The economics didn't pencil as much as we want to do this. So this is a challenge. This is a challenge for us as citizens. This is a challenge for us as a society. We have to make tough decisions. But what my message to you today is don't close your eyes and pretend it's going to fix itself. Because it's not. It's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take collaboration between the public and private sector to get us there. So when you go home after the conference, and if you pass that Superdome, pause a second and think, what can I do to help this situation? because your children will thank you for it. Thank you for your time. I consider it a gift.
Thank you, Chris. And now we'll take questions for any of our speakers.
Actually, I have a few if you don't mind.
Take your time.
This has been a great talk through the three. I'm a food processor. So food processor wasn't an option when I checked in this morning of coming to this waste convention. And so first I would like to urge the three of you to try to hook up with Food Processing Association. I'm a member of NAMI and others, and I do believe that this talk would do very well in that environment. Maybe better than this environment because, you know, it may be too late by the time you're talking to the folks at the landfill. So I'm going to throw that out there for whatever it's worth. Elise, I very much appreciate what you do with the USDA. I am a USDA/FDA facility in Cincinnati. I'm one of the largest suppliers to the school lunch program in the country. This is not, I'm going to be critical if you don't mind. I mean, a suggestion, call it what you will, and I'm interested in comments back. But, you know, the whole GMO thing, I actually have a significant science education. We did not, the food industry and the government did a poor job of managing the education of the public of genetically modified. Clearly that itself is a solution to a large portion of this problem. Clearly GMO, genetically modified foods, that would not go to waste then because it would have longer shelf lives, it would resist pests, all the right things. Quite frankly, you know, I've argued that all the food that you eat today is genetically modified. None of us eat any food that is not genetically modified. Excuse me, thank you. Within the USDA, at the AMS level, some of their specifications are pretty tight. Might lead to the ugly fruits not being eaten. Within your organization, there may be some regulations that cause some of this problem. Also at CNS, the specifications for me to produce food for the school lunch program, I often have to make food that the kids are probably not going to eat because it doesn't taste the way the kids want it to taste. So I'm going to throw that out there that there may be some opportunity for all of us, including me. So I'm here at a waste conference because I have a great desire to reduce food waste myself, being a processor. And as odd as that is from an economic standpoint, quite frankly, I can sell more product if you throw it in the landfill. But I don't want that to happen. I have to tell you that all of us have the same desire to try to save the planet.
Can we get to the question?
Okay. So, I guess my form in the form of a question is, you know, can you maybe work with some of your agencies to get that done, you know, to try to work that out. And then over on the EPA side, I tried to take some steps to doing composting, and it became rather prohibitive to get permitted.
I'll just go really fast.
Pass the, do you have the?
No. Are these working?
No. They are working?
Go ahead, it's on.
There you go.
Okay. I guess I have to hold it. Okay. On? So just very quickly, in the budget that was just passed, there is money that's going to USDA to do education and outreach to consumers on genetically modified foods, what it means, what it entails. There is also mandatory labeling. Congress passed last year a labeling law that foods in the United States that contain genetically modified foods will need to be labeled moving forward. We're not really sure what that law is right now, but it was passed by Congress. USDA has responsibility for developing and then applying that law. If you have any specific example where you think that USDA regs are causing more food loss and waste, particularly in our procurement programs, let me know. We're very willing and able to work with suppliers or with Feeding America. We've done a lot of work with Feeding America, looking at our regs to see if there's a way we can do food donation better, get it to consumers that need it. As far as school meals, it is tricky to make kids eat food. It is really hard. But I do want to point out in 1928, the favorite vegetable in schools was canned spinach. Why? Because of Popeye. There's a lot of stuff we can do to help kids eat healthy meals. We can't just throw up our hands and say they don't want it. We're not going to give it to them. We can do better. Thanks.
Questions?
That's a real quick one. I run a recycling facility in Chicago. Our tip fees, let's just say, are $20 a ton or something like that in that area. And we take about 150 tons of organics in a day. And we thought we could take more, we could process more, right? But the question I guess I have is, and I ponder this myself, and I don't ever want to propose government regulation, but I don't necessarily like it that much. But without some type of government mandate, right, about what to do with food waste in a city like Chicago, you're never, ever going to get anybody to really significantly divert organics. It's not going to happen. Because of what you said, that trickle down, the fact that it's 17, 20, $25 a ton, no one's going to go out of their way to divert.
I agree. And frankly, if we allowed people to put toxic waste and nuclear fuel rods into landfills, they'd put them there too.
And so, so the point is, how do you balance those two things?
That's right.
I guess for everybody, how do you balance government mandate, right, to get that to happen without being overly burdensome, at the same time trying to promote some type of commercial aspect to it? I mean, that is what you saw, at least in low tip fee environments.
I agree. That's the dialogue that needs to occur, and that's the action that needs to occur. And I think that we need to find the right balance. Because again, I'm not all for just straight legislation on this stuff. We need to find that right balance. But the answer today is clear. Where we are today is it's not getting done.
So if I may add to that, I do sustainable materials management at EPA, and it's a voluntary program. It's a voluntary process. What we try to do is highlight the job creation, the economic value, and create that value, the balance. We've seen that there can be some success in the electronics world. We brought together the largest manufacturers and the OEMs in the electronics industry, and were able to successfully get some big changes in how used electronics are managed in the United States without the regulatory process being introduced through voluntary approaches. We hope to do the same thing with food. It's slower, but when people do things in a voluntary way, sometimes they go above and beyond. Regulatory platforms create a floor. When people do things in a voluntary way, they sometimes go above and beyond. And so that is why you heard me reference using valid and consistent data. We believe if we can show through data the economic advantages that one can have by implementing these strategies, that they will voluntarily do things. You see that now Vermont and Connecticut have started through regulatory arena, and some states are looking at that. But there are some that are starting to do things on a voluntary way because they don't want that regulatory hammer, for lack of a better word, coming at them.
Can I just say one quick thing to that really quick? So first of all, I think, at the local level, these landfill bans, increasing the cost of tipping fees, these are really important. This is how we get incentives right. We can't just be creating this stuff and throwing it away. But a really strong word of caution. We also don't want to get incentives wrong so that we're over-investing in anaerobic digestion. We have examples across Europe where European countries have been, or cities or counties or groups of European countries have been gung-ho on getting food waste into generators and creating energy. You know what? They stopped producing so much food waste, and now these generators are looking for their feedstock. These are expensive systems. We want to make sure that we get incentives right. Don't throw it away in that landfill. But we want to make sure that we don't overinvest in systems that are going to be orphans eventually.
I've got several questions for Chris, and I'll try to make it a package. One, you talked about composting markets. Can you say how digestate, the downstream from AD, fits into that in a kind of a nutrient way? The difference in the amount of nutrients and how you're getting specifically farmers in Central Florida use your product, and then as a kind of a different piece of this, can you talk a little bit in a generalized way about the German model in terms of in-feed tariffs, value of food waste, and so on, and kind of what that bar looks like versus the U.S.?
Sure, I'll try to be brief. There are a number of different ways to anaerobically digest material, and some of the digest that comes out needs to be composted to. Some of it, however, can just be dried and be used as a fertilizer. That's what we do in the Orlando facility. So we create a granular fertilizer with the material that comes out of the facility. In terms of the German model, I'm not suggesting that we follow it. Frankly, I think that they went to an extreme. And I would agree that it got overbuilt. And that's where the balance needs to come in, like we were talking about earlier with this gentleman here. I think that we need to do more than we're doing today, but we need to do it in a responsible way so that we start to get some of these facilities built without getting to the point where it's government subsidization run amok.
One more question. Norma. Uh-oh.
I'd be intrigued to hear the discussion between Chris and Cheryl in terms of the comparison we're using. Chris made the point that AD is not economically feasible in many cases due to low landfill tip fees. But if we're looking at creating new infrastructure for any segment of waste management, today's capital cost, now if you're building a landfill today, you're building a sewage treatment plant today, whatever you're building today, is a heck of a lot more expensive than a facility that's been there for 50 years. So I'd just be curious today if we were going to actually build new landfills that met the same standards to which AD facilities are being held today, what would the tip fees be at landfills? And maybe that's the public policy driver that we need to look at, is are these facilities at or below the replacement cost for the entire new conventional waste management infrastructure?
Okay, so let me ask you a question. When you talk about the cost, are you also including the post-closure care cost for a landfill? Because a lot of times when I talk to people, they talk about the active costs for that landfill, the current operating costs for that landfill. They do not include the 30-year or beyond 30-year post-closure care cost, especially if there are leaks or some type of contamination that results from that landfill. They're only looking at what is going on right now. So when you're asking me that question, what kind of cost are you asking me about?
Yeah, and that I imagine would make the comparison even more beneficial for AD. One that I had in mind, for instance, okay, you're permitting a brand new facility today, and you've got to be at or below, 9 milligrams of ammonia. What? I mean, they don't even measure a lot of the things to which AD facilities are being held. Those are not even being measured at a wastewater treatment plant or at a landfill or at a composting facility that's built today. The challenges we have, and we are rightly held to a higher standard because this is state-of-the-art infrastructure, but yes, state-of-the-art is more expensive than what was created and would still be grandfathered today.
Agreed.
With that said, thank you for all your questions. Thank you for joining us. And please give a big thank you for all of our speakers.